Advanced Studio Classroom is on the air. Do your kids ever get bored? Is that such a bad thing? Find out next. Hello everyone, you are listening to Advanced Studio Classroom. My name is Brandon. Today we begin our parenting article. It's August 14th. Hope you are staying cool. And we have some cool people here on the radio panel today. First, welcome Gabe.
Well, hey everybody. Brandon, thanks for having me on today for the parenting article. Do you guys have a parenting article every month, by the way, Brandon?
We don't, but we have been focusing on parenting the last little bit. And it's important, right? There are a lot of parents out there and there are a lot of kids. And we need all the help we can get, right? I'm not a parent yet, but I'm speaking for other parents. That's not a good thing to do, but I'm sure everybody could use a little help, right?
Well, yeah, actually, that was one of the reasons why I'm happy you invited me is because I feel like I learn a lot of new things, even while teaching advanced articles.
Yeah.
They're so insightful.
You're a parent yourself, so we look forward to the insights that you will share with us. We also have Rebecca here on the program today. Welcome back, Rebecca. Great to have you here.
Thank you so much, Brandon, and I'm happy to be here. I do love kids. I don't have any kids of my own.
But you've worked with kids a lot.
I've worked with kids a lot, and I actually have 4 younger brothers and sisters. And so when I was older, sometimes I had to kind of act like mom.
Okay.
Well, when I was babysitting.
So you're the oldest?
I'm actually the second oldest.
You're
so I have one older
oldest.
sister and then 2 younger brothers, 2 younger sisters.
Yeah, I think sometimes I have an older brother and I felt like sometimes he was a third parent. He is 5 years older than me. Not now, but you know, when I was a kid, right?
I think sometimes my younger siblings felt that way about me too. I could be a little bossy when I was younger.
Well, speaking of your younger siblings, we have one of your younger siblings here in the studio with us today. We have Katrina. Welcome, Katrina.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Katrina, you are currently in college, is that correct?
I am, yes.
All right, and you're entering which year coming up?
Entering into my senior year.
Okay, your senior year.
That's
wow,
right,
congratulations.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right, so you probably don't have a lot to talk about concerning your kids. You don't have any kids, right?
I don't have any kids, no.
Okay, but you have been a kid. So.
I have definitely been a kid.
All right, you can share about that. And it's nice to have both of you and Rebecca here on the program together as we're talking about families and kids and so forth. So you can share maybe some stories where, I don't know, you argued and maybe Rebecca beat you up or you beat her. I don't know how that went.
You think I would beat my little sister up? Oh.
Never know.
You never know, right? All right, well, we are on page 26 today, and the title of this article is What Our Kids Need. First, we're going to talk about letting children get bored. That doesn't sound like a fun thing to do, but apparently it works. So let's get into the article. We're going to have our first reading there on page 26.
What our kids need. The benefits of kids being bored and how to lead by example. Let children get bored. As a proud dad to 2 young children, I love my kids. Most of the time. But there's a specific set of circumstances that proves especially challenging for my wife and me. Going out to eat with friends who don't have kids. Whenever we'd head out to a restaurant, it was almost impossible to have a conversation. So, like many other parents I know, we'd resort to what we knew would keep them occupied and give us the best opportunity at salvaging the evening. We handed over the iPhone. I always felt a little guilty doing it, like I was cheating. Then I read this great New York Times article by Pamela Paul, Let Children Get Bored Again. Boredom is something to experience rather than hastily swipe away, Paul argued. Boredom is useful. Of course, it's not really the boredom itself that's important. It's what we do with it, she continued. When you reach your breaking point, boredom teaches you to respond constructively, to make something happen for yourself. But unless we are faced with a steady diet of stultifying boredom, we never learn how.
All right, the benefits of kids being bored. Now, I don't usually think of that as a benefit, right? You usually think of, you don't want kids to get bored. You want to keep them preoccupied with something, right? But before we get into more of the actual article, I want to ask our panelists about when you were a kid and when you told your parents, I'm bored. How did they react to that? What did they do, Rebecca?
Well, when I was young, I don't know, Katrina may have had a different experience because we actually are 14 years apart.
Okay.
So there is quite a bit of, quite an age gap. But when I was younger, the word bored did not exist in our dictionary, in our vocabulary.
Like you didn't know the word, or they weren't allowed to use it?
Let me further explain. We weren't allowed to say, Mom, I'm bored.
Okay,
We were never allowed to say, Mom, I'm so bored. Mom would send us to our room and make us play on our own. Or even worse, Dad would lock us out of the house. He would tell us to go outside and literally would lock all of the doors outside the house. Or if we said we were bored, he would put us to work.
There you go.
Is this to get you guys to just kind of get out and be in nature and just go do stuff?
Yeah, we weren't allowed to just sit inside and be bored. They would lock us out of the house and we couldn't come in for hours and hours. Or my dad was always working on house projects and he would put us to work, working on painting.
So does it scare you to even say the word bored now?
Well, now, bored. But now I have so many interests.
Okay, there
that
you go.
It's very difficult for me to find myself bored. Sometimes I find myself procrastinating, not wanting to do work.
Yeah.
But not
Right,
bored.
but not bored.
Not
you
bored.
find something to do. Okay, how about you, Katrina? You grew up in the same household. Do you have a similar story?
I definitely did grow up in the same house, and we have similar, slightly different views. Being bored was not an option because, as Rebecca said, it often led to having to do chores or housework. And so what I would strategically do is find a place away from the sight or ears of my parents and would just had to learn how to keep myself occupied.
You would just scream, I'm bored?
Wouldn't dare.
Okay. You found something to do. How about you, Gabe, growing up? Did you get bored, and how did your parents react to that?
Well, I think it does make a difference having four siblings. There were 5 of us all together. So, my youngest sister, she loved it when we were all in the house, and then all of a sudden we started graduating high school one by one and going off to different places, and then all of a sudden she started feeling really bored because siblings really do make a difference, having your brothers and sisters around and just to play with and stuff. But yeah, actually, Rebecca, when you mentioned that, I thought my dad had the same reaction to the word boring.
He locked you out of the house?
He didn't lock us out of the house, but he told us. He's like, why do kids say, this is so boring, or I'm so bored? There's so much stuff to explore in life, there's so many things to do, and it's true, and I think maybe that's how he kind of grew up. And I appreciate, I guess, looking back, when I went to church, as a young kid, I can still remember sitting there next to my parents when there was no Sunday school because the church was too small, and there was no Sunday school teacher, and I didn't understand what the sermon was about because it was all in Taiwanese. And but I had a little coloring book there with me, and I could kind of draw. Yeah. And I found that I was able to entertain myself.
There you go. That's the key. But these days, don't you think it's a bit harder, right? Because we have all of the technology, and we're used to being stimulated, and we're used to having, the cell phone, the tablet, the TV, whatever in front of us. Even as adults, we kind of struggle with that, right? But kids, they don't maybe have the capacity, right, that we do, and so it's difficult. And so that's really what this article is all about, letting your kids get bored, but also talking about kind of the role that technology plays. So as we start off, we hear from the writer of this article, and he says, as a proud dad to 2 young children, I love my kids. Good place to start, right? That you love your kids. Okay, we got that down. But then he says most of the time, right? So I guess, of course, your kids, I'm sure, get on your nerves from time to time. And you still love them, but, maybe don't feel like you love them at that point.
Yeah.
Gabe, can you relate to that? You have a kid now?
Well, for sure. And I think he actually means he loves his kids all the time. I think he's just having fun with the way he's writing here.
Right.
That's a sense of humor. And it's true. I have a kid who's almost 2 years old now, and so he's reaching the terrible twos age. And he's cute a lot of the time, and he's, the things he says or tries to say, and the way he walks and dances. But then, sometimes he'll want to do stuff that he knows is bad.
Right.
Throwing things on the ground, disturbing our neighbors or other customers at the restaurant. That kind of stuff.
And I'm sure, as the kids get older, we were kids once, right? And, as you get older, you can cause problems for your parents, right? And so in this situation, this man, they're going out to dinner and so forth, and they feel like, oh, the kid won't be quiet, right? So we can have a conversation with the adults. And so that's kind of the issue at hand here. And so he says there's a specific set of circumstances that proves especially challenging for my wife and me. And it's going out to eat with friends. And they don't have kids, and so maybe they don't understand, that situation, right? And I think we can relate to that. If we don't have kids, we might think, oh, why is the kid so loud, right? Do you ever feel that way, Rebecca?
That's a great question, Brandon. Actually, I feel like over the years, I've gotten a lot more patient. I know that at one time, if I would go out and have a meal with friends who had kids, and of course, I don't have kids, perhaps at one time, it would have been a little frustrating if the kids were loud and whatever. But something, I feel like as singles, we need to be understanding.
Sure.
I mean, we were all kids at one point in time. And kids are going to be kids, and I think they need to be allowed to be kids.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And we need to put ourselves in the shoes of others, right? And everybody's kids they're different, right? Maybe some people their kids were kind of quieter, and so they have different expectations. But that's not every kid, right? And so we need to leave room for flexibility and to let kids be kids. Yeah.
However, I will say we have a neighbor that lives right above us, and they do have a kid, and I'm sure the kid is very, very, very precious. But sometimes the parents do allow their kid to run around at midnight, 12:30, 1 in the morning, and that is a little frustrating.
Yes, I would say so. There are limits.
There are definitely limits. So I feel like kids should be in bed by midnight.
Yeah.
My wife almost every day, or at least a couple times a week, makes some kind of comment like, oh, I feel so sorry for our neighbors below us. Because my son is just running around.
Right. That's when you, I guess, get to know the neighbors better and cook them some food or something. Have them over for dinner. Well, anyway, so that's what this guy's facing, he and his wife. And so he says, like many other parents I know, we'd resort to what we knew would keep them occupied. And what is he referring to here? What are they resorting to, Katrina?
So it seems that in today's society, the easiest thing to quiet a child is put them in front of a TV, in front of a screen, in front of an iPhone. It says we handed over the iPhone.
Isn't that easiest, right? Just, okay, be quiet. Here's an iPhone. Here's a tablet or something. So they resort to this, meaning that when you resort to something, it's like the last thing you want to do, right? You can't find anything else. You say, okay, I'm going to just give you this and it's a quick fix, hopefully, right? And they're trying to do what? They're trying to salvage the evening, Gabe. That's a good word to know, to salvage something.
Right, exactly, because they wanted to have a quality time with their friends, and they're realizing now it's not going to be as quality as they hoped. So that's the idea behind the word salvage, is they're trying to do the best with what they have. They're trying to make the situation as good as possible.
Right, and so he says, I feel guilty about this. He felt like he was cheating. What does he mean by that? What's he cheating. He's not taking a test.
Oh, no, he's not taking a test. But basically, what he means is he was taking the easy way out. So rather than, trying to spend time with his child or look for another way to kind of entertain the kid, he just handed over an iPhone and he thought, oh, that's an easy way to do it. Keeps the child quiet.
Right, but as we see next, he's going to learn something new, and I think that's important, right? And maybe you feel kind of bad about something and you start to ask questions and think, is there another option, right? And so we see he read this New York Times article by Pamela Paul, and it's entitled, Let Children Get Bored Again. And that's kind of where, started him off on this journey of letting children get bored. And what does she say about boredom?
Yeah, well, it's something to experience rather than hastily swipe away. So boredom is useful, or it can be useful. And I have to say, I identify with the author. His experience eating with people at restaurants is something that we think about sometimes too when we take our kid.
So what do you do about that? Your kid.
But there's a difference, though. He's less than 2.
Right, that's what I was about to say.
He's younger than 2 years old. So he has his imagination. He's able to kind of entertain himself in a way, just with the sounds that he makes and playing with his food. Kids don't get bored at that age as easily, I don't think.
Yeah.
They still make noise, and they still, he gets antsy and he wants to get down from his high chair and run around.
That's very different.
Way before the meal is over. But that's different from getting bored, I guess, slightly. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so I'm sure in the coming years you'll deal with that more, and you can test this out, see if it works.
We'll come back and have a follow-up lesson.
And this is an important point. I highlighted this on the paper here in front of me in the magazine. It says, of course, it's not really the boredom itself that's important. It's what we do with it, right? And sometimes we ourselves, we're not kids, right? But we may feel, I'm bored. So what are we going to do with that? What are we going to do about it, right? Or just sit there and be bored or do something about it. And then, Katrina, next, they talk about this idea of breaking point. What does it mean when you reach your breaking point? What is that? When someone says, I'm about to reach my breaking point, what are they really saying?
So they're saying that, you get to this point where you just can't take it anymore.
Exactly. Right? You reach this point and you're like, I can't do this.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and you're trying to figure out, well, I don't like the way it has been, so what am I going to do next? What am I going to do so that I don't feel this way anymore? And the article runs right into that about finding something that's constructive.
Yeah, and so you're bored. You're bored to death, we say sometimes. And so you're kind of reaching this point where you don't know what to do. What does that boredom teach you, Rebecca?
Well, it says that boredom teaches you to respond constructively, to make something happen for yourself. And that actually reminds me when I was younger, if we ever said, oh, we're bored, Mom and Dad might actually give us 2 options. They might say, well, go find something to do, go read, or else you will have to clean, do household chores. And so they actually did teach us early on that if you have time on your hands, then go do it. Yeah. Or like when I was younger, I took piano lessons, and so Mom would be like, oh, well, then go practice your piano. Go do something with that time that you have.
And I think they're teaching you responsibility, to take responsibility for that, right? You're
That's
bored,
right.
well, you go find something to do. It's not up to them to figure it out.
Right, because sometimes as kids, we want someone to entertain us at all times. And if your sibling isn't there to entertain you, then, oh, Mom and Dad are playmates. They can entertain us. But no, they're busy too.
So you can respond constructively, meaning that you find something useful to do, right? And then make something happen for yourself. It doesn't always depend on someone else to do that. Even as a kid, you need to learn that because that's a life lesson, right, Gabe? Like, as an adult, it's not everything doesn't depend on someone else, right? You're sitting at home, you're bored. Well, find something to do.
It's true, although I got to come back to the fact that my son is a toddler now, and he needs our attention like almost all the time. It's he just whines if we're just trying to rest. No, he won't let us rest. You know what I mean? He wants to us to play with him with some toys, or watch some of his favorite little kid cartoon music videos,
Yes.
or read a book, and that's great. All those things are great, but the idea is one of us has to be there with him at this age.
So if you want to rest, you might say, hey, let's put this on the TV, which could be good some of the time, right? Or watch this on your tablet or your phone so they can be quiet and you can do your own thing.
I think it's a matter of training to get to that point where he doesn't need us in the room all the time, right next. So, but that's an age thing too. He's at that stage where he just needs us all the time.
Yeah.
So later it's going to come where I'm going to have to think outside the box, or get my child to think outside the box and make the use of his time in a creative way.
Now, it says here, unless we are faced with a steady diet of stultifying boredom. That word stultifying, Rebecca, what in the world does that word mean?
I'm glad you asked. It's actually one of our more information words, and it refers to something that has a dulling effect. So basically, it just means that they're looking for a way to kind of dull boredom.
Okay, or boredom can kind of make you feel dull as well, right? Mm-hmm. And so this steady diet, I like the way they put that. Like you're just bored all the time. And I think this boredom kind of numbs you, right? And unless you get to that place of facing that, you're not really going to learn how to get through it. In other words, if every time you're bored you say, Mom, Dad, I'm bored, well, and they're going to give you the tablet or the cell phone, and then you never really face it, and you don't work through it, and you don't learn how to really deal with the boredom. Well, next we're going to see how this man tried it out with his kid and see how that worked. So join us as we go to our next reading, and we'll come back for a discussion.
Trying it out. The next time we went out to eat, it didn't take 5 minutes. Can I play a video game? No, I responded. Then what should I do? I don't know. Figure it out. Then something interesting started to happen. My son, who's learning to read, started looking around. He began sounding out words wherever he could find them. Posted signs, the menu. This was amazing. Of course, that only lasted a few minutes. Now I really don't know what to do, my son told me. Maybe you can try talking to our friends, I suggested. What followed was a great conversation between my children and our adult friends. They learned about their likes and dislikes, what they shared in common. Best of all, my children were no longer a distraction. They were part of that evening, playing a role just as large as the rest of us.
All right, so the next time they went out to eat, it didn't take very long for the kid to say that they're bored, right, or that they want to do something. So, their kid says, "Can I play a video game?" And the dad answers, "No." Okay, kid's not used to hearing that, right? And some kids, maybe they're not used to hearing no, and so that can be pretty intense for them. Well, then he says, "What should I do?" And then, how does the dad answer, Rebecca?
Well, he says, I don't know. Figure it out. It's a great response.
That would be rough to hear that as a kid if you're not used to hearing it, right?
Oh, yes. Very difficult, I would think.
And then he says something interesting started to happen, Gabe. What did the kid start to do?
Well, he started to deal with his stultifying boredom. I would say it's probably not stultifying yet, but he was learning how to read at that stage, and so he started looking around, sounding out words or whatever he could find on the menu, the signs, and that kind of stuff. And I thought, when I was reading this the first time, I thought, great, maybe he could spend the rest of his time at the restaurant just doing that, but that's not what happened.
No, that only lasted a few minutes, of course. And then his son said what, Katrina?
His son came back to his dad and said, now I really don't know what to do.
Oh, he's done everything he could do, right? He's looked at every sign, trying to sound out words. And then what did his dad suggest?
Well, his dad says, maybe you can try talking to our friends.
Now, that's a good thought, right? But you don't normally think of maybe a kid this young interacting with the adults. You would think maybe the kid just does his own thing. It'd be nice if there were some other kids there, but this particular couple, they did not have kids. And so, but the kid could actually interact with the other adults there. And what was the result, Gabe?
This is great. So they had a great conversation. Everybody present was talking to each other. The adults were talking to the kids. And I have to say, I really appreciate that our article mentions this idea because a lot of parents feel like their kids are too young maybe to relate to their friends or too young to relate to other adults. And I have to say, looking back, growing up, I'm so glad that I learned how early on to ask questions to adults, to my parents' friends, or to other people that were older, maybe not my age, but I engaged in a lot of interesting conversations. I got to know a lot of people that way. And I have to say, as an adult, when I see and meet other people's kids now, like I can tell a difference if a kid is just wanting to play with their cell phone and they haven't learned the proper manners of communicating with people. And it's actually kind of annoying because I do want to get to know kids and, people of any age. And I think they're worth getting to know. And so it's great when you can engage in that kind of conversation.
Yeah, kids have immense value, right? And I think this will help kids grow up a bit, right? I mean, sometimes you talk to some kids and you feel like they're little adults. They're so mature. I'm not saying they have to be that mature, but at least engaging them in this manner will help them to learn how to relate to adults and also how to learn skills, as Gabe was talking about, and they're not just sitting there with their phone and so forth. We're not trying to judge parents, by the way. And, most of us in this room aren't even parents yet. And so we realize that it could be very challenging, right? And so, handing the kid the phone or the tablet, might be something that you do sometimes. But we're just saying here what's ideal. And actually, this man who wrote this article, Justin Barizo, does have kids, and this is his perspective, right? And I think we can all learn from it. And so he ends with saying, best of all, my children were no longer a distraction, right? They were part of that evening, playing a role just as large as the rest of us. And so they were included, and that is helping the kid not be bored. And it's also, I think, helping everyone at the table to have a good time, Rebecca.
That's right. And just to kind of add to that, I think that when kids do have a meal with adults, they should be included. I think it's important to ask the kids questions because honestly, kids do have important things to say too. And I think that it's important that they are valued and they know that they're seen and are valued.
Seen and heard. Not just seen, but seen and heard.
That's exactly what I was trying to say.
There we have it. We'll have to leave it there because we are all out of time. We hope you will join us tomorrow for day 2. Tomorrow, we'll talk more about raising well-adjusted children. Have some good points there, so join us for that. And we hope you've enjoyed today's topic and can apply that to your life as well. Well, until tomorrow, this is Brandon.
Rebecca?
Gabe?
And Katrina.
Saying goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.